This is Dan Harmon. Many recognize him for his work as the creator of Community and Rick and Morty. He also created The Story Circle. The Story Circle is a streamlined version of the hero's journey. The hero's journey has existed as a theory in storytelling for hundreds of years, but it wasn't until 1948 that the framework was laid out. This is Joseph Campbell. In his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, he summarizes the hero's journey with these words. A hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. The hero comes back from his mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on his fellow man. This story device is the framework of many famous stories, from Frodo in The Lord of the Rings to Luke and Anakin in Star Wars. Even Shrek follows the hero's journey. Now, when it comes to video games, implementing the hero's journey, or what I will focus on, the story circle, is much harder. Early games in the history of gaming that followed a narrative had a much easier job of following the story circle, as they had one single narrative. But modern games have given us many alternate ways a game can pan out. The modern RPG is pretty hard to analyze under the story circle, since so many alternate events can happen, and so many different choices can be made by the player, while narrative-driven games are easy to look at using the circle. So today, I will analyze 3 video game protagonists under the lens of the story circle: Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2, Nathan Drake in Uncharted, and the Lone Wanderer of Fallout 4. While I've briefly explained Campbell's hero's journey, I've barely touched on the story circle. So let's go back to the 90s. A 20-something Dan Harmon is working on codifying the structure of movie and TV shows. This obviously would have led him to Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. Harmon simplified the hero's journey into his 8-step story circle. You, the protagonist, need something. Go, start your journey. Search the perils of the journey. Find what you need. Take the price you have to pay. Return to where you started. Change, see the effect of your journey. While these words alone sound like one of Kevin's sentences from The Office, they actually convey the hero's journey in a much simpler view than Campbell's initial monomyth. It's pretty simple, so let's look at our gaming characters. I tried to pick 3 different characters from 3 different styles of games. Nathan Drake represents narrative storytelling. The Sole Survivor represents the RPG style of limitless decisions that affect the events of the story. And Arthur Morgan is the amalgamation of both those forms. So let's begin. While I could look at Nathan Drake throughout all 4 games, I've chosen to focus on Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, as it finishes his story and helps make the story circle nice and round. So let's start at the beginning. You. We know our protagonist as Nathan Drake. He is a treasure hunter who has retired following Uncharted 3 to be with his wife, Alana. Need. Nate needs to help his long-lost brother, Sam, get the treasure of Captain Avery to pay off a cartel. Go. They begin their journey for Avery's treasure by traveling all over the world. Search. They are searching for Avery's treasure while also searching for smaller keys to the puzzle along the way. Find. They find the lost pirate city of Libertalia. Take. The price is that Sam lied to Nate, and they have actually been helping Rafe, the bad guy, find the treasure the whole time. Return. Nate returns to fight Rafe and save Sam, and they all make it out happily ever after. Nate also returns to his retired life with Alana. Change. Nate and Alana settle down and start a family. Nate's journey follows the story circle and hero's journey very well, and is a great example of a simple story in a game that follows the circle while also being a great game. Before I begin, I could have chosen any Bethesda protagonist, as most of them are very similar, but I find that the Fallout 4 protagonist has an interesting circle that I couldn't pass up, so I will look at him today. Let's begin. You, the sole survivor, Nate or Nora. Need. To find your son, Sean, who has been kidnapped. Go. You leave Vault 111 and enter the Commonwealth. After this step, the story circle sort of warps, as while finding Sean is the main goal, 4 other major questlines enter the story, with the Minutemen, Railroad, Institute, and Brotherhood of Steel. Search. Look for a way to enter the Institute with one of the 3 factions, the Minutemen, Railroad, and Brotherhood of Steel. Depending on who you side with can open a side circle, like siding with the Railroad will inevitably give you the same outcome as the Brotherhood, but siding with the Minutemen could give you a totally different outcome, as you could still side with the Institute after that. Find Sean, who is the leader of the Institute. Take. Decide if you will destroy the Institute or join the Institute. Again, more little circles are going to open up, like when you had to decide which faction. You can have peace with some of the factions, you can have war with some of the factions. Either way, people are going to end up dying, and there's no way to prevent it, no matter which way you side with. People will die. Return. Depending on whatever outcome you have chosen, you return the hero of the Commonwealth, having destroyed the Institute. Or you are the head of the Institute because Sean died of cancer, and you took over in his place. And destroying the Institute could be done many ways, whether it's with the Minutemen and Brotherhood, the Railroad and Minutemen, or these groups by themselves. Or you could have sided with the Institute and had peace with the Minutemen, but obliterated the Railroad and Brotherhood of Steel. Change. Basically back to the third option of moving forward into the Commonwealth, as you now have to see, moving forward in the Commonwealth, how your decisions affect it. The story of the sole survivor starts pretty normally, but by the end it goes crazy on the story circle. But if the player has a set way they want to complete the game, they can easily complete the story while also having a nice, simple circle. So, we have looked at Nathan Drake and the sole survivor, so now what if we mixed up their story circles and put it into one protagonist? Red Dead Redemption 2 has a lot of RPG elements, but it's actually very narrative. So let's look at Arthur Morgan's circle. You, Arthur Morgan, an outlaw in the Dutch van der Linde gang. Need, to escape the law enforcement after a botched robbery. Go, leave from hiding in the mountains. Search, for a way to escape the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Find, that Dutch has a plan to escape by moving out west. Take, realize Dutch's plan won't work, so you have to choose between loyalty and survival. And so Arthur chooses survival of the others over himself, and fights Micah while the rest of the gang escapes. Or you go for the money the Dutch has hidden, and inadvertently help the others, but either way nets the same outcome. Return. Arthur dies, and is buried in view of Amberino, which is a nice way to wrap up his story, as he is back where he started in a way. Change. See how it affected John Marston, especially with the epilogue, as it shows how Arthur affected John's future. So Arthur's story is a great example of a good mix. You have several choices you can make throughout the story that allow for a great amount of freedom, but the story will still inevitably follow one single circle. Most good stories follow the story circle in a way. Not every story needs to follow the circle, but it helps if it does, as it allows for a more complete story. Look at the ending of Game of Thrones. The finale takes the circles of Daenerys and Jon and throws them away, but then tries to pass it off as an ending. Nobody likes stuff like that. And so now I'm entering spoiler territory for a game coming later this year, so if you want to avoid it, go down to the comments and click the timestamp. Okay, now that the people who don't want to find out spoilers are gone, let's talk about this story circle that does not exist. Joel's story in the first game follows the circle beautifully. In the words of director George Lucas,
yeah, it's like poetry.
Part 2 has spit on the story circle from the first game, and has decided to use similar tactics to Game of Thrones' ending. Throw away the circle and replace it with useless twists to help the story move. I'm not going to talk super in-depth spoilers, but let me just say we play as 2 characters, Ellie and the new character, whose name I've forgotten. They both have separate circles, and both of their circles are not cool. The normal formula that Naughty Dog has used has worked for a long time, and I don't know why they wanted to switch it, but they've definitely done a very bad job of it. So why did I make this video? I've seen the hero's journey and story circle pop up all over shows and YouTube videos I've been watching recently. Rick and Morty had a whole episode that had a lot of the themes of Dan Harmon's story circle. Dave Filoni, in an amazing monologue during the Mandalorian documentary, talked about the hero's journey and its effect on all of Star Wars, and it was amazing. So I was interested in applying the circle to the game characters I loved, and it resulted in what you just watched. The hero's journey and Dan Harmon's story circle are not necessarily necessary, but they help to craft a great story, and they definitely help to craft great stories in video games. All the characters who I talked about have great stories in their games, and even if they don't necessarily follow the story circle perfectly, they do still have a good story. But as fans grow to criticize more stories in film, TV, and video games, it's apparent that most of these stories fail the circle. So with loads of upcoming games having players hyped, let's hope and see how well the story circle is applied, and if it's not, let's see how well they execute their story that they wanted to share.